On Christmas Day, my son locked the door and said, "You're no longer part of our family. Get out." I saw his wife laughing behind his back, but instead of getting angry, I just nodded, got in my car, and made one phone call. 5 minutes later, all the guests got up from the table and left, leaving them in an empty house. It was a betrayal that demanded justice, and I provided it by turning everything upside down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Dad, why can't you be like Peter? He's a real man with real money. These words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I froze on the threshold of the living room, looking at my son Cody, who was adjusting his expensive Rolex, one that probably cost more than my monthly pension. His designer jacket lay perfectly on his shoulders, tailored to measure his success. Everything about him screamed wealth I'd never had. "What did you just say to me?" My voice was quieter than I wanted it to be, a barely audible whisper. Cody rolled his eyes, the same gesture he'd made as a teenager when I'd asked him to clean his room. Only now he carried the weight of adult cruelty. "You heard me. Peter Mills has built an empire. Look at this place." He gestured dismissively at my modest furniture, at the worn but clean couch where I had spent countless evenings helping him with his homework. The blood boiled in my veins. "Those nails paid for your college education, every nail. A college that barely helped me until I married Bethany." He straightened his silk tie with deliberate precision. "Peter is the one who gave me real opportunities, real connections. And you? You've only slowed me down with your worker mentality." My hands shook as I gripped the doorframe. 40 years of double shifts, missed dinners, back pain, it all came down to me slowing him down. "I made everything out of myself for you. And what do I have for it? A father who lives in a house that screams construction worker at everyone who comes to visit." Cody's laugh was sharp, cutting. "Do you know how embarrassed I am when Bethany's friends ask about my family? Peter owns half of Denver's commercial district, and you own—" "What? Power tools?" Something snapped inside me. The careful restraint I'd maintained for 37 years of parenthood had finally cracked. "Out!" I pointed to the front door with a firm finger. "Right now. Oh, please, don't play the aggrieved father. We both know I've outgrown this place, outgrown you." Cody took measured steps toward the door, each one echoing with disdain. "Maybe it's time you accepted that some people are meant for bigger things." The door slammed so hard that my family photos shook on the mantelpiece. I was left standing in the sudden silence, contemplating what had just happened. My son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the teenager I drove to every baseball practice, had just dismissed 40 years of my life as worthless. Outside, metallic scraping sounds came through the windows, footsteps on gravel. Something was being dragged across the concrete. Too emotionally exhausted to investigate, I sank into my favorite chair, the one with the small hole in the leather from Cody's childhood. Adventure with scissors. I went through my evening ritual like a ghost, hanging my work shirt in the closet with mechanical precision. My reflection in the bedroom mirror showed a 70-year-old man who suddenly looked his age. Cody's words echoed with every movement. A real man with real money. As I brushed my teeth, I couldn't escape the memory of 8-year-old Cody, proudly showing his friends the toolbox I had given him for Christmas. "My dad builds everything," he announced with pure excitement. When did this pride turn into shame? I remembered that night when I worked until 3 in the morning on the Henderson project, and then drove straight to Cody's high school graduation. Coffee-stained work clothes and calloused hands, but I made it. Cody hugged me afterward, whispering, "Thanks for always being there for me, Dad." The same hands he had just rejected as symbols of mediocrity. Paying for college meant 18-hour days for 3 years straight. I missed family dinners, sacrificed weekends, gave up vacations with friends. Every overpayment went directly to his education fund. "I want you to have the opportunities I never had," I told him during those grueling years. He seemed grateful at the time, understanding the sacrifice. But everything changed when he visited Peter Mills's estate for the first time. I could still imagine that fall evening when he returned from Bethany's family dinner, his eyes burning with a hunger I had never seen before. "Dad, you should see Peter's house. It's like something out of a magazine, a wine cellar, marble floors, paintings worth more than our entire neighborhood. His voice was full of awe, but underneath it was something darker envy. Then the comparisons began. At first, subtle ones. Peter says investment portfolios are more reliable than pension plans. Then bolder ones. Maybe I should have studied business instead of engineering. Finally, the inquiring looks when he visited my modest home, as if he were seeing it with new, critical eyes. Phone calls became shorter. Dinner invitations were fewer. "Sorry, Dad, Bethany's family is having an event," became his standard excuse. I tried not to notice how his voice changed when he spoke of Peter. Reverent, enthusiastic in the way he used to speak of me. Last Christmas he arrived an hour late with expensive gifts that seemed more like obligations than gestures of love. "Peter is teaching me about tax benefits," he said as he unpacked the watch I'd been saving for months. "Charitable contributions can be very strategic." Even my gifts became lessons in his new philosophy. I watched my son transform from a boy who was proud of his working-class father to a man who was ashamed of his background. Each visit revealed new changes: designer clothes, a practiced way of discussing stock options, casual mentions of exclusive clubs and business lunches. Today's confrontation was not a sudden brutality. It was the inevitable conclusion of years of growing distance. Peter Mills didn't just get a son-in-law, he stole my son. Perhaps not out of spite, but because of the simple fact of existing in a world where my sacrifices seemed insignificant. Lying in bed, I looked up at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time Cody had asked about my day, my health, my happiness. The silence stretched back months, maybe years. When had I become unimportant to the boy around whom I had built my entire life? The house creaked around me with familiar sounds, the wood settling, the foundation shifting, the gentle protests of the house that had protected us through storms and holidays. This house, which Cody now considered shameful, had been his refuge during every childhood crisis. Sleep finally overtook me around midnight, but even in my sleep I couldn't escape the echo of his words. Some people are meant for greater things. Obviously, I was not one of them. Morning light seeped through the bedroom curtains, harsh and unforgiving. My joints protested as I rolled out of bed, every movement a reminder that 70 years had taken its toll. The digital clock read 8:15 a.m., later than usual, but yesterday's emotional beating had exhausted me more than any physical labor. I trudged to the bathroom, avoiding my reflection in the mirror. Coffee called out to me from the kitchen, promising the caffeine I needed to face another day in this new reality, where my son saw me as an embarrassment. The morning routine seemed foreign after yesterday's shock. Pulling on a worn flannel shirt and work jeans, I went through the motions of getting dressed, while my mind replayed snippets of Cody's cruel words, worker mentality. The phrase stuck like a thorn in my skin. The December snow had fallen overnight, covering my modest neighborhood in a pristine whiteness that made everything appear cleaner than it really was. The familiar ritual of brewing coffee and getting the morning paper from the porch usually grounded me, gave structure to days that sometimes felt empty after retirement. But as I stepped outside into the crisp Colorado air, I immediately noticed something unusual. My mailbox, a simple black metal one I had installed 15 years ago, was crooked on a post, the door hanging open at an unnatural angle. I approached slowly, my breath forming little clouds in the frosty air. The damage was not accidental. Someone had taken a baseball bat or a crowbar, bending the metal deliberately, maliciously. Fresh scratches disfigured the surface, and the pole itself was loose, tilting the entire structure toward the street. "Damned kids," I muttered, although something about the precision of the destruction didn't seem random. This was not a teenage prank. It was purposeful, personal. The memory of yesterday's metallic scraping sound suddenly made sense. I bent down to examine the base, my knees protesting the movement. Footprints in the snow around the mailbox, size 10 or 11 boots, adult prints. The cold penetrated my clothes as I tried to reconstruct what had happened after Cody left. As I walked back to the house with the newspaper under my arm, I felt an unfamiliar sensation crawling up my spine, an uneasiness. In 40 years of living in this neighborhood, I'd never been targeted for vandalism. The timing seemed too convenient to be a coincidence. In my warm kitchen, I poured coffee into my favorite cup and opened the newspaper on the table. The familiar comfort of the morning routine should have calmed me down, but my concentration slipped. The words blurred as my mind went back to the damaged mailbox, to Cody's venomous words, to the growing certainty that yesterday's confrontation wasn't over. I thought about calling the police, then dismissed the idea. What would I tell them? My mailbox was vandalized the same night my son called me a loser. They'd think I was a paranoid old man connecting unrelated events. The coffee went cold as I looked at the headlines I couldn't comprehend. Sports scores, weather forecasts, local news. Nothing penetrated the fog of unease that had settled over me. Something seemed wrong, incomplete, as if yesterday's quarrel was only the first act of a larger play. I tried to focus on the crossword puzzle, a daily ritual that usually provided an escape from life's complications. 7 across. Betrayal of a family member. The irony was not lost on me, but I couldn't even summon a bitter laugh. The kitchen clock ticked steadily to 9. Outside, the neighbors were beginning their morning routines. Garage doors were opening, cars were pulling out of driveways, and the normal sounds of suburban life continued, despite my personal upheaval. Then the phone rang. I stared at the phone for 3 rings before answering, half expecting a telemarketer or a wrong number. The last voice I expected to hear was Cody. "Dad, it's me." His tone carried an artificial sweetness that immediately alerted me, completely different from yesterday's brutality. "Cody." I kept my voice neutral, not knowing where this conversation would go. "Listen, I've been thinking about what happened yesterday all night. I completely overreacted." The words flowed too smoothly, too rehearsed. I said things I didn't mean, and I'm truly sorry. My grip on the phone tightened. After 40 years of parenting, I knew when Cody was lying, and it seemed like an art form. "You seem pretty clear about your feelings." No, that's exactly it. I was stressed about work, about money, about everything. You know what Bethany's family can be like." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Something cold settled in my stomach. The Cody of yesterday had been brutal, but honest. This version seemed dangerous in its deception. "Actually," he continued, "that's why I'm calling. Bethany and I would like to invite you to Christmas dinner tomorrow night at our house. It's nothing fancy, just Bethany's father, his business partners, and some other relatives, all successful and wealthy." "Christmas dinner?" The words came out choked. "Dinner is at 6. Bethany is making her famous roast." I should have said no. Every instinct screamed danger, but a desperate part of me wanted to believe that my son felt genuine remorse. I guess I could come." "Fantastic. Oh, and Dad, maybe wear that nice suit from Mom's funeral." First impressions mattered to Peter's company. The line went silent for a moment, and I heard muffled voices in the background. Then Cody's voice, distant but audible, as if he'd forgotten to hang up properly. "He really believed it." Cody's laugh was sharp, cruel. "Did you hear that pathetic hope in his voice? You're terrible." Bethany's voice more amused than disapproving, although I have to admit, this will be interesting. "Peter will love it. His successful business against my construction worker father. The contrast will be perfect." "Don't forget the legacy," Bethany added. "Daddy needs to see how much better he is than your father. This dinner guarantees us my father's inheritance and business." "Right. By the end of the evening, Joseph will look so pathetic next to Peter's company. Peter will see how much we love him, and no one else but him." My hand was shaking so badly that I almost dropped the phone. The complex cruelty of their plan hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about using me as a prop in their manipulation of Peter Mills. I carefully hung up the phone, my whole body shaking. They had planned this. Not just a dinner, but an emotional manipulation, a fake apology, a deliberate preparation for public humiliation. My son didn't just reject me, he decided to turn me into a weapon. The kitchen suddenly seemed smaller, the walls shrinking as the full extent of their betrayal settled in on me. This was not teenage rebellion or adult disappointment. This was calculated cruelty, designed to destroy any dignity I had left. I sat down heavily in the chair, the newspaper crumbling to the floor. For several minutes I couldn't move, couldn't think of anything but the echo of their laughter and the indifferent way they discussed my humiliation. But slowly, something else began to grow in my chest. Not the defeat I had felt yesterday, but something firmer, more focused. If they wanted to play games with my emotions, if they thought they could use me as entertainment for their schemes, they were about to find out that this old builder still had a few tricks left in him. The phone was silent on the cradle, but my mind was already working. My hands kept shaking. Father, the builder. The words repeated in my mind like a broken record. Not even my father or dad, just the name of the profession, the social classification that confused them. I gripped the arm of my chair until my knuckles turned white, fighting the dizziness that threatened to overwhelm me. Bethany's giggle kept playing in my head, that sharp sound of breaking glass, of a young woman who found real pleasure in planning an old man's humiliation. This is going to be interesting. As if my dignity was a dinner theater for their entertainment. But it was Cody's voice that hurt the most, a pathetic hope. He recognized the desperation in my tone as I accepted their invitation, and he relished it. My own son had made a weapon out of my love for him, turned my willingness to forgive into ammunition for their scheme. I stood up slowly, my legs wobbling beneath me. 70 years of life, 45 years of marriage, 37 years of parenthood, all reduced to props in their Peter Mills play. They weren't just rejecting me, they were planning to make a circus show out of my working-class background. A photo on the fridge caught my attention, Cody's high school graduation, both of us smiling by his diploma. I worked 18 hours a day to afford the fees for that private school. Now he wanted to use my sacrifices as proof of his own superiority. Something fundamental shifted in my chest, not the devastating sadness I felt yesterday, but something firmer, more centered. My father taught me that a person's worth is not measured by their bank account, but by how they respond when life knocks them down. You can lie there and take it, he said after the neighborhood bullies cornered me when I was a boy, or you can get up and show them who you really are. I went to the living room window and looked at my damaged mailbox. The vandalism suddenly made perfect sense. A psychological warfare designed to make me feel vulnerable to their dinner invitation. They had orchestrated every detail, from the property damage to the fake apology, building to the big finale tomorrow night. But they made one critical mistake. They assumed I would remain in the dark about their plan. I moved to the desk drawer, where I kept important phone numbers. Peter Mills had given me his business card last year at Cody's birthday party, a gesture of respect between in-laws. Call anytime, Joseph. We should get to know each other better. I appreciated his directness then, his lack of pretense despite his obvious wealth. Now that business card represented something completely different, an opportunity. My engineering mind began to analyze the situation with mechanical precision. They wanted to humiliate me in front of Peter, to demonstrate his superiority and secure the prospects of an inheritance. But what if Peter found out about their deception in advance? What if he finds out that his daughter and son-in-law are manipulating him into cruelty to an elderly family member? Peter Mills did not build his business empire by tolerating dishonesty. From our brief conversations, I recognized a man who valued honesty above social careerism. He would not have appreciated being used as an unwitting participant in psychological abuse. The phone number seemed to pulse with possibilities as I held the card. One conversation could change everything. Not revenge, exactly, but justice, ensuring that manipulative schemes meet appropriate consequences. Peter Mills would not have built his business empire by tolerating dishonesty. From our brief conversations, I recognized a man who valued integrity above social careerism. He would not appreciate being used as an unwitting participant in psychological abuse. I checked the kitchen clock. It was 9 a.m. Peter would already be in the office, probably reviewing contracts or planning business strategy. A good time to call a fellow businessman, even a retired one. For the first time since Cody left, yesterday I felt something other than pain and confusion. Purpose, a direction, confidence that I would not be a victim of anyone, not even my own son. Finding Peter's business card took longer than expected. I carefully filed it in my desk organizer, sandwiched between insurance documents and warranty information, a precise organization that had served me well for decades of engineering projects. My hands stopped shaking, replaced by the steady concentration I once brought to reviewing blueprints and construction schedules. The card felt substantial between my fingers, expensive cardboard that spoke of success earned, not inherited. Mills Commercial Development. Peter Mills, Director. Below that was his direct office number and cell phone number, 2 ways to reach a man who didn't hide behind secretaries or assistants. I settled into my reading chair, which had a clear view of both the front window and the kitchen clock, and picked up the phone. The strategy required careful timing. I understood that accuracy was more important than speed. What exactly was I supposed to say to him? The truth, of course, but delivered with surgical precision. Peter needed to know that his daughter and son-in-law were manipulating him, using family gatherings as stages for their auditions for his inheritance. But I couldn't sound like a bitter old man complaining about ungrateful children. I silently rehearsed my opening lines. "Peter, this is Joseph Taylor. I'm calling about tomorrow's dinner." Too formal. "Hi, Peter. Joseph here. We need to talk about Cody and Bethany." Too confrontational. The approach had to balance urgency with respect, honesty with diplomacy. The facts were simple. I had accidentally overheard a conversation that revealed their true intentions for tomorrow's dinner. They planned to humiliate me in front of him to demonstrate their superiority and advance their inheritance prospects. They even damaged my property to psychologically soften me up. I needed trust, which meant acknowledging my own emotional interest while maintaining objectivity. "Peter, I know this puts you in an awkward position, but I thought you deserved to know what they're planning," appealing to his sense of fairness, not asking him to take sides. One potential complication troubled me. What if Bethany was with him? Father-daughter breakfasts were not unusual in family businesses. I needed to be prepared to offer to call back later if the time was not right for a private conversation. But my instinct told me that this was the moment. Waiting would only give me more time to doubt myself, to lose the clarity that came from righteous anger and recent betrayal. Peter Mills struck me as someone who valued straightforwardness, who would rather deal with problems head-on than let them fester. I returned to the phone, card in hand, and took a deep breath. This conversation would determine whether tomorrow night would be their triumph or their downfall, whether justice would prevail over manipulation, whether the old builder could outsmart the privileged children who had underestimated him. The numbers felt familiar under my fingertips as I dialed. Professional muscle memory from decades of important phone calls, contract negotiations, emergency consultations. Each number deliberate, purposeful, irreversible. The phone started ringing. Peter picked up the receiver, and I told him everything without any hope that he would believe me. But surprisingly, what I told him shocked him, and he did not hide his confusion and anger. I told him my plan, and he agreed to help me. Pups 7. Full pus. Full. The next evening, I drove through the upscale Hillcrest neighborhood in Denver, which seemed surreal to me. Mercedes and BMWs lined the curved streets like expensive jewels displayed on velvet. Christmas lights twinkled from mansions that could house 3 families my size, each a testament to a wealth I could never have imagined. Cody's house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, its limestone facade illuminated by strategically placed spotlights. Peter's black Bentley dominated the circular driveway, surrounded by other luxury cars that probably cost more than my annual pension. The scene looked like a magazine spread, titled, "How the Other Half Lives." I parked my modest Honda next to a shiny Porsche, the contrast almost comical. Through the massive front windows I could see silhouettes moving around the elegant dining room. Peter's business associates, no doubt spectators for tonight's planned humiliation. Checking my appearance in the rearview mirror, I smoothed my tie and adjusted my jacket. The same dark blue suit I wore to my wife's funeral looked decent enough, though it would seem worn out next to the designer clothes inside. That was exactly what Cody and Bethany were counting on. But as I walked along the immaculate stone path, my steps were confident and my breathing calm. Let them have their moment of triumph. Justice had a habit of coming when it was least expected, Before I could reach for the bell, the front door opened with theatrical precision. Cody stood in the golden light pouring from inside, his expensive suit immaculate, his expression bearing the cruel satisfaction I had heard in his voice yesterday morning. "Well, well, look who's at our doorstep." His voice was loud enough for the guests inside to hear. "Did you really think you belonged here today?" Behind him appeared Bethany, like a supporting actress coming out on cue. Her black cocktail dress probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and her smile had the sharp edge of anticipated amusement. "Oh, this is precious. He really came." "Dad," Cody stepped forward, completely blocking the entrance, his body language screaming possession and control. "Let me make this crystal clear to you." His voice rose with practiced cruelty, ensuring maximum impact on his audience. "You are no longer family to us. Only Bethany's parents are our family now. You go away." The words hit the cold air like physical blows, designed to wound and humiliate. Inside, I could see the guests stopping their conversations, some turning toward the commotion with the awkward fascination people reserve for public embarrassments. Bethany's laughter bubbled up from behind Cody, excited and malicious. "Did you see his face? Oh, it's even better than we imagined." But instead of the broken ruin they expected, I felt only a strange sense of completion. It was exactly what I had prepared for, exactly what Peter needed to confirm through his sources inside. "I understand." My voice remained steady, disappointingly calm for their theatrical performance. "Well, Cody, I hope you get everything you deserve today." I met his eyes with the quiet dignity of a man who had worked honestly all his life. "Everything." His expression flickered with momentary confusion. This wasn't the script he had written, the pleading, the shame, the public humiliation that would demonstrate his superiority to Peter's influential friends. "That's right, old man. Go away, back to your little builder's house where you belong." But there was less conviction in his voice now, unsettled by my unexpected restraint. I turned and walked back to the car with measured steps, my back straight despite the December cold. Behind me I heard Cody's forced laughter and Bethany's comments, but their words seemed distant, unimportant. When I got to the Honda, I settled into the driver's seat and watched the house through the windshield. Through those expensive windows, Peter's guests continued their elegant evening, unaware that they were about to witness a very different kind of show. I took out my phone and dialed Peter's number. The phone rang twice before Peter's familiar voice answered, professional but warm. "Joseph?" "As we discussed," I said simply, watching the golden windows of the house where my son thought he had just achieved his greatest victory. "I understand completely." Peter's tone carried the weight of a man who had built an empire, quickly reading situations and acting decisively. "Thank you for keeping me informed." The call ended there. No dramatic statements, no long explanations. Just two men who understood that some betrayals demanded immediate consequences. Peter raised his glass of wine, drawing attention. The room gradually fell silent as Denver's business elite turned to their host, expecting pleasant Christmas cheer, or perhaps a toast. "Friends," Peter's voice carried the authority that had brought him millions. "On this Christmas Eve, I want to talk about family values. Real values that are more important than social status or financial success." Cody and Bethany beamed, interpreting this as validation of their actions, proof that Peter appreciated their demonstration of superiority over Joseph's working-class background. I've learned today about people who value money over character, who manipulate family relationships for personal gain. Peter's tone remained conversational, but his words carried surgical precision. People who treat older family members as props in their schemes of social careerism. The first shadow of confusion crossed Cody's face. This was not the praise he had expected. I also learned the difference between inherited wealth and earned dignity, between people who build themselves up by tearing others down, and those who maintain their integrity regardless of their bank balance. Bethany's smile began to fade as the guests exchanged glances. Peter's meaning became unmistakably clear. So today I choose to spend my Christmas with people who understand that family loyalty and basic human decency are more important than manipulative and greedy children. Peter set down his wine glass with finality. I choose to leave this house and this company. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Peter walked to the front door with calm determination, his decision made and executed with the same business efficiency that had built his empire. "Peter, wait," Cody's voice cracked with despair, but Peter did not stop. "Daddy, you don't understand," Bethany began, but her father was already reaching for his coat. None of the guests needed further explanation. In Denver's social hierarchy, following Peter Mills was simply common sense. One by one, the guests began to gather their belongings, muttering polite excuses that fooled no one. "This is a misunderstanding," Cody exclaimed, his voice rising to panic. "We can explain everything." But explanations were unnecessary. The exodus began, and in a matter of minutes, the elegant dinner party disintegrated into an awkward scramble for the exits. Peter was the first to leave the house, his dignified gait cutting through the December air to my modest Honda. Behind him followed 3 other guests, successful people who had just witnessed something extraordinary. "Joseph," Peter's voice carried genuine warmth as he approached my car. "I believe we have a better place to spend Christmas Eve." "Indeed." I unlocked the door, inviting them inside. "Follow me, gentlemen. It's not far." The convoy formed naturally. My aging Honda led the parade of luxury cars through the night streets of Denver. In the rearview mirror, I watched as Bentleys and Mercedes followed my modest car like a funeral procession, although it was more like a celebration. "I have to ask," Peter said from the passenger seat, his voice still tinged with shock. "How did you know to prepare for today? How did you foresee all this?" "After I overheard their conversation yesterday morning, I called you right away. But even before that, I drove through the traffic light, choosing my words carefully. I've been watching Cody change for months." One of the guests, a close friend of Peter's, leaned forward. "Did you really prepare an alternative dinner?" "A full Christmas feast," I confirmed, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "I prepared it today. It seemed wise to have a backup plan." Peter nodded admiringly. "Most people would either have avoided confrontation altogether or gone into it unprepared. You did neither. 40 years in construction teaches you to plan for all eventualities. Always have a backup plan when dealing with unreliable people." The irony did not escape me, calling my own son unreliable. We returned to my neighborhood, where modest houses contrasted sharply with the affluent area we had just left. Christmas lights twinkled from small front yards, creating a warm, authentic atmosphere that money couldn't buy. "That's what I was trying to tell them in my toast," Peter continued, looking at the working-class houses. "Real wealth isn't about bank accounts or designer clothes. It's about character, loyalty, who you are when no one is looking. You gave them exactly what they deserved." Other cars parked along my street, expensive cars that looked strangely out of place in this honest neighborhood. All the guests got out of their cars not with contempt, but with genuine curiosity about this man who had outsmarted the manipulators. "I have to mention," Peter said as we walked to my front door, "I'm ending all business relations with Cody immediately, and Bethany." He paused, pain flashing across his features. "She'll inherit much less than she expected." "I'm sorry about that, Peter. I never meant to cause trouble between you and your daughter." "You didn't cause anything, Joseph. You revealed what was already there." He stopped at my front steps, looking back at the cars lined up behind us. "These people," he pointed to all the people surrounding us, "they respect what you did today. So do I." Mrs. Henderson, from the house next door, peered through her curtains at the unusual collection of luxury cars, probably wondering if I had won the lottery or joined some exclusive club. In a sense, I suppose I had. A club of people who value honesty over inheritance. "Welcome to my home," I said, taking out my house keys. Warm light poured through the windows onto the front porch, and I could see my dining table set for the exact number of people now standing behind me. The evening was far from over. Opening my front door felt like unveiling a masterpiece. Warm light poured out of my modest living room, revealing the Christmas tree I had decorated with ornaments collected over decades of marriage and parenthood. The dining table, visible through the archway, was set for 8, with my wife's finest china. Beautiful tableware I had almost forgotten about. My God, Joseph! Peter entered first, his gaze taking in every detail. Did you really prepare all this? I started cooking at noon, I replied, helping the guests with their coats. It seemed like the right thing to do. The house smelled of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and apple pie, aromas that spoke of a real holiday, not a social performance. In my kitchen, the dishes were waiting on the counter, everything perfectly timed and ready to serve. All the guests moved through my house with respectful admiration, looking at family photos and admiring the authentic Christmas decorations. They were successful people, Peter's relatives and partners, accustomed to luxury, but they seemed more comfortable here than at Cody's expensive exhibition. It feels like Christmas, one of them commented, settling into my favorite chair. Real Christmas, not some magazine spread. I began bringing dishes from the kitchen, golden turkey, carved and arranged on plates, mashed potatoes with real butter, green beans from my own garden that I had frozen last summer. Peter immediately joined me, carrying salad bowls without being asked, our partnership naturally extending to domestic cooperation. "When was the last time you saw me serve dinner to myself?" he asked quietly, pouring water into glasses around the table. "I usually have people to do that for me." "Today we're all just family and friends sharing a meal," I replied, setting out the last of the place settings. The transformation was striking. Peter Mills, who owned half of Denver's commercial district, was helping an elderly builder serve dinner, and it felt completely natural. His partners, accustomed to five-star restaurants and catered events, praised my simple cuisine with genuine enthusiasm. "This turkey is incredible, Joseph," said one of them, cutting into the perfectly brown bird. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" 45 years of marriage," I replied, pouring wine from bottles I had saved for special occasions. "My wife taught me well before she passed away." The conversation flowed around shared stories of family traditions, honest work, and values that truly mattered in life. These wealthy businessmen found themselves relaxing, laughing, and sharing memories of their own humble beginnings and the people who shaped their character. Peter raised his glass when the main course was over. "Joseph, I want to thank you for today, not only for revealing the truth, but for reminding us what true hospitality looks like." "And what a real family means," added another guest. "Family isn't about blood or money. It's about the people who support you when it matters." I slowly stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. Everyone fell silent, sensing that something important was about to happen. The warm light from my Christmas tree cast gentle shadows on the faces that had become allies, even friends, in the space of a single evening. Headlights appeared through the front window. 2 cars stopped behind the others, their engines dying with the abrupt finality of desperate decisions. I raised my glass, looking around the table at faces glowing with genuine warmth and satisfaction. "To family," I began, raising my glass to the warm faces surrounding my dinner table. "Not the family we were born into, but the one we choose. The people who support us when it matters, who value character over." The front door burst open without warning. Cody stormed through my living room like an invading army, Bethany close behind him, both still in their expensive party clothes, but now disheveled with despair. "How dare you?" Cody's voice cracked with rage as he took in the scene. Peter and the guests comfortably seated around my modest table, wine glasses raised, faces glowing with genuine warmth. "How dare you steal our guests?" The reaction around my table was immediate and uncomfortable. Guests put down their glasses, shifted in their chairs, witnessing this display of privileged rage. Peter's face darkened with shame for his daughter, who stood next to Cody with tears of disappointment streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't steal anyone," I replied calmly, still holding my glass. "I just offered them a place where they would be welcomed as guests, not used as props." "You manipulated them," Bethany squealed, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You turned them against us with your sob stories and your poor old man act." One of Peter's partners cleared his throat diplomatically. "Actually, we left because of the toast your father gave about family values. It was quite instructive." Cody turned to the guests, his despair palpable. "He's lying to you. He's just a bitter old builder who can't accept that his son has surpassed him. He sabotaged our dinner because he's jealous of our success." "Success?" Peter's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Is that what you call planning to humiliate your father to impress me and the guests?" Bethany rushed to her father, kneeling beside his chair, Daddy, please, you don't understand. We were trying to show you how much we love you. By using Joseph as a target for ridicule, Peter's voice carried the coldness of utter disappointment. By planning his public humiliation as entertainment? It wasn't like that, Cody insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. We just wanted to show the contrast between... The room fell silent, except for Bethany's muffled sobs. Around the table, faces showed a mixture of sympathy for my situation and disgust at the young couple's behavior. These were successful people who understood the value of character, and they had witnessed its complete absence. Cody's face reddened with rage and despair. He turned to me and said, "You ruined everything. Do you have any idea what this cost us? Peter, his legacy was our future." "Your future was never built on solid ground," Peter said, slowly rising from his chair. The authority in his movement instantly caught the attention of everyone in the room. It was built on manipulation, greed, and the assumption that I would never discover your true character. Bethany looked at her father with pleading eyes. "Daddy, please!" "No." Peter's voice carried a finality that drowned out all protests. Peter stood with the commanding presence that had built a business empire, his gaze shifting between his daughter and son-in-law, with the cold assessment of a man who had just discovered termites in his foundation. "Bethany, Cody," he began, his voice echoing through my dining room with devastating clarity. "Today you have revealed yourselves to be the very people I have avoided my entire business life. Manipulative, greedy, and fundamentally dishonest. Dad, you can't," Bethany began, but Peter raised his hand to silence her. "I can, and I will." Effective immediately, Cody is dismissed from all business relations with Mills Commercial Development. Your job, your access to company resources, your future participation in any Mills family ventures, it's over. Cody's face turned white. "Peter, please, I can explain." "Furthermore," Peter continued, his business-like precision cutting through every interruption, "my will is being rewritten next week. Bethany, your inheritance is reduced to exactly what Cody brought into this marriage. Nothing. The bulk of my estate will go to charities that truly understand the value of helping others without expecting anything in return." "You can't do that," Bethany cried, jumping to her feet. "I'm your daughter." "Yes, you are my daughter, and today you showed me what kind of daughter you have chosen to be." Peter's voice carried a deep sadness beneath its firmness. Someone who would humiliate an elderly person for personal gain. Someone who values money over basic human decency. Around the table, Peter's partners nodded in agreement. These were people who had achieved success through character as much as ambition, and they recognized justice when they saw it. Cody made one last desperate attempt. "It's all his fault." He pointed at me with trembling hands. "He turned you against us. He poisoned your mind with lies." "Joseph told me the truth," Peter replied simply, "something you two seem incapable of doing." I slowly stood up, feeling the weight of justification, but also the responsibility it carried. "Cody, I'm sorry it came to this. I really am. But you chose this path when you decided that my love for you was something to be exploited, not cherished." "Keep your fake sympathy," Cody hissed, but his voice was breaking. "You ruined our lives." "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves. I just made sure that the consequences finally caught up with your choices." Bethany grabbed Cody's arm, pulling him toward the door. "Let's go. We don't need them. We don't need any of them." But even as she spoke, reality set in. Without Peter's business, without his inheritance, without the connections they had just pushed away, they had very little left except each other and the consequences of their actions. They left without a word, the front door closing behind them with the finality of the end of a chapter. The silence that followed felt different from the awkward tension of their presence. It was the silence of justice done, of order restored. Peter sat back heavily, suddenly looking his 65 years. "Joseph, I owe you a deep apology, not only for their behavior, but for not seeing it sooner." "No apology necessary," I replied, settling back into my chair. "Sometimes we see what we hope to see in the people we love." One of the guests raised his glass again, "To true family values, and to the people who live by them, instead of just talking about them." "And to second chances," added Peter, looking around the table with genuine enthusiasm. Sometimes the family we need is not the one we were born into, but the one we are lucky enough to find. I raised my glass one last time, looking at the faces that had become friends through the crucible of this strange evening. "For Christmas Eve," I said simply, "and for reminding me that character, not wealth, makes life rich." Outside, snow began to fall on the quiet neighborhood, covering the footprints of those who had left and blessing those who had decided to stay. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.